In 1939, George Orwell wrote this powerful essay about his experiences of colonialism and poverty in Morocco. In it, he records his own response to a group of old, poor women collecting firewood. He writes, quote, "What is strange about these people is their invisibility. For several weeks, always at about the same time of day, the file of old women had hobbled past the house with their firewood. And though they had registered themselves on my eyeballs, I cannot truly say that I had seen them. Firewood was passing. That was how I saw it. It was only that one day I happened to be walking behind them, and the curious up and down motion of a load of wood drew my attention to the human being underneath it. Then for the first time, I noticed the poor old earth-colored bodies reduced to bones and leathery skin, bent double under the crushing weight." End quote. His point, of course, is not that poor Moroccan women are literally invisible, but that they are rendered so by his own European male preference not to see them, his own desire not to confront how their poverty contrasts with and may even prop up his own material comfort, and how that state of things might oblige him to act. He would rather not see, and so he does not. Orwell's passage also captures the rich man's problem in Jesus's parable today, his inability or unwillingness to really see Lazarus, the poor man at his gate, as a fellow human being. The rich man's case of blindness is so severe that he cannot overcome it even after death, when his and Lazarus's fortunes are reversed. The story is so ironic here that it's comical. The rich man's disregard for Lazarus's humanity has landed him in fiery torment, but when he looks up to heaven, he addresses not Lazarus, but Abraham, his equal. And what does he say? Essentially, "Father Abraham, it's so hot down here. Send the servant boy, Lazarus, to drip water on my tongue with his finger." Even when Abraham spells out why Lazarus is being rewarded and the rich man punished, he still doesn't get it. "Okay, fine," he says, "if you won't send Lazarus to me, then send him to warn my brothers about this awful place." Even at this stage, Lazarus remains a nobody to him, a peon, a human tool, good only for the furthering of his own ends. I'm reminded of a scene in the TV drama Succession, in which a fictionalized Rupert Murdoch, looking to sell his media empire, brings his family to a dinner put on by a politically liberal matriarch of another huge media holding company who might be interested in buying. At one point, the matriarch's cook comes into the room to serve a dish. The cook is clearly harried and scrambling around the kitchen. "Oh, you must join us for a bit," the matriarch says to her. "You work too hard. Take a break and come have some food." The cook politely declines, and this micro expression crosses her face that says, "Who does this rich lady think is going to produce this meal if I stop working and sit down with her guests right now?" It's such an absurd invitation. The matriarch's liberal pretense that she and her employees are social equals and not what they really are, which is a contemporary version of master and servant. The matriarch is using her cook as a tool to advance her own image as enlightened and open-minded and anti-hierarchy. But underneath this facade, she's just like Jesus's rich man, failing to recognize the humanity of her cook who is in the middle of a very stressful day of work. So too, we can cite Hillary Clinton's sweeping description of Donald Trump's supporters in 2016 as a basket of deplorables, a phrase that surely energized her base, even as it denied the humanity of many poor rural voters. Or we can point to the governors of Texas and Florida, who have recently bused and flown immigrants to East Coast locations to score partisan points with little concern for the welfare or even basic informed consent of the people they have treated as pawns on their political chessboard. Clearly, Jesus's parable satirizes this kind of attitude. The story's structure also subtly pushes back on a cultural understanding of who is important by giving the culturally low status person a name, Lazarus, while keeping the high status person anonymous, the rich man. In this way, the parable insists on Lazarus's humanity. He's an individual with an identity and a story. He matters. The message is in keeping with Luke's promise of a reversal of worldly fortunes in many other passages, such as Mary's rejoicing that God has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty, or Jesus's own Sermon on the Plain proclaiming blessings on the poor and hungry, for they will be filled, and woes to the rich and full, for you have received your consolation. Clearly, Jesus has a prophetic warning to deliver to any who may enjoy higher status or wealth in this life. But the real danger, he implies, is how such status poisons our ability to see others as fellow children of God. Upon dying, the rich man leaves his riches behind. What he can't seem to let go of is the dehumanizing, instrumental view he continues to hold of a person who in life was so far below him in the social hierarchy. So, as Paul puts it to Timothy today, the call is not to be haughty, but rich in good works, generous and ready to share, so that we may take hold of the life that really is life. Vision and generosity, acknowledgement of the less fortunate, willingness to share. That's what this whole thing is about for you and me. I'm struck by the memory of a service trip my first church took to help make houses warmer, drier, and safer in Appalachia many years ago. There was this Christian men's volunteer group we met down there. Big guys, pickup trucks, beards, rough country voices, and camouflage caps that read "Soldiers for Christ" on the front. They were about as different from us Episcopalian Yankees as you could imagine. Anyway, these men were assigned to help a family whose house had burned to the ground, who were living in tents on their property, and whose children had therefore been removed by the state to a relative's place down the street. After their first day of volunteering, these good old boys were getting choked up, telling us how the family had made them soup, and they had sat and broken bread together at lunch. The next day, they skipped breakfast so they could be out at the work site at 6 a.m. And they went past dinner working as hard as they could to frame up and wrap a new home for this family. Talking about the experience, those guys used words that you wouldn't necessarily expect from men who looked like they came out of a Duck Dynasty episode. They talked about how humbled they were to do this work, how moving it was to see the dignity with which this family coped with their situation. A number of these guys had decent construction jobs. They were doing okay. But they came down to that little holler in Appalachia, and they really saw the people who lived there. And that seeing inspired them to do what they did, to be rich in good works, generous and ready to share, and to take hold of the life that really is life. Amen.